All right, so here's where things get even more complex. You'd think with all of this blood sugar floating around, which is potential energy, and all of these pantries filled up with fat, which is also potential energy, you think that we'd be like little energizer bunnies, right? Full of energy. However, here's the kicker. Insulin is a storage hormone. Its main goal is to make the body a safe environment by clearing that sugar from the blood. So, as far as insulin is concerned, the body has plenty of potential energy in this blood sugar floating around, and that's the stuff that it wants to prioritize. It wants the body to use that first, rather than going into the pantry and breaking down the fat that's been stored in there. So if you think of it like your own kitchen, if you have a freezer full of meat, however, your kitchen counter is also full of meat, all right, you want to use what's there and what's available in front of you first, because that stuff's not going to last. The stuff in the freezer, that'll keep. This stuff's dangerous or, vulnerable. So that's the stuff that you want to prioritize. So essentially, insulin locks up those pantries and stops the cell from accessing that stored fat. So what happens then is people that are overweight, they can't access that fat and break down that fat so long as their insulin is high. So if they're continuing to eat foods that are higher in sugar or higher in the wrong sort of carbohydrates that will increase the blood sugar, they're going to increase the blood sugar, they're going to increase the insulin is going to stay high, it's going to keep shuttling all of that into the cells where it can, or it's going to make the cells insulin resistant. In the meantime, all of that fat is going to keep locked away in the cupboard, and it's not going to be able to break that down. However, if those cells are insulin resistant and they're not opening those doors and letting that sugar in from the blood, then they can't access that energy source. And the high insulin levels means they also can't access their pantry of fat. So the process that creates energy from sugar is actually left starved, despite the fact that there is a plethora of glucose and of energy source packed in the pantry and floating by in the bloodstream. It can't access either of these. So we end up tired and fatigued. We end up having mood swings. We end up with energy crashes and depression and all of these things, these other symptoms that come along with these sorts of energy metabolism issues. And about now, we're looking pretty sick, aren't we? We're potentially overweight, we're insulin resistant to some degree, we're possibly diabetic or pre-diabetic, and we're exhausted, and we have no energy to access to live our daily lives. And this is the reality that so many of us are walking around with. So many of us are stuck in this limbo of high insulin, which is driving the storage message constantly. And to get out of this limbo and out of this vicious cycle, we need to change what we're putting into our bodies and into our mouths. We need to change the types of carbohydrates that we're eating to promote a low, steady, stable blood sugar, which will then promote a low, steady, stable insulin response, which will allow all those other processes to occur naturally. The cells won't get resistant to insulin if it's only there when it needs to be, and then it goes away. And they'll also have a chance to tap into their stored fat if that insulin drops every now and then, if it's not kept massively high and not kept in this driving storage situation. I hope that makes some kind of sense. Feel free to jump into the group and ask any questions that you have from that, because this whole concept is really important to show you how the food choices that we eat can influence so many different aspects of our biology, starting with something as simple as our blood sugar and our insulin response. And I'm also going to come shortly to how that insulin response affects our brain, and how insulin resistance is implicated, and diabetes is implicated in cognitive decline, mood disorders, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia as well.